Hi everyone, so I'm here tonight to share another Copic painting. This one is called Japanese Moon Garden, and it is based on a painting that is taught at Pinot's palette in acrylic paints. And what I did was I just took the picture and then tried to duplicate it using Copic markers instead. So let's get right to it. The first thing that I did was I took a circle punch that was 2 inches, and I used the inner part of the circle to fill in the outline of the moon with a 00 marker. And then I'm going to start coloring in the sky, starting with a B11 marker and just going in a circular motion around the moon. And then the next color that we're going to use, which is the one that's being used on screen right now, is B000. And we're just going to continue to make that halo around the moon. And then eventually we are going to get to B91 and B95. And B91 and B95 are going to be the colors that round out the rest of the evening sky for our Copic painting. And again, I'm just using that same circular motion with these 2 colors. Right now I'm using the B91, and I'm going to cover the entire sky with B91 and then go over it on the outer edges with B95 and then blend it together with B93. One thing I just wanted to let you know, so the reason why I tend to like the Pinot palette paintings as the image to copy for these Copic paintings is because I find that they really are tailored towards beginners, which means that the hand movements that you have to use when doing the painting, whether it's with acrylic paints or with Copic markers like we're doing here, are pretty easy to duplicate. And also there's not a lot of judgment involved. It's just a bunch of simple techniques that are required to complete the painting, so it's suitable for a beginner. And another reason I like them is because the colors, they pick really good colors, and part of having a good painting is having a good color scheme. And I myself, I'm not the best at choosing or mixing colors, so if I can find a sample that someone else has done and emulate it, then my work tends to be better. Okay, so we're just about finished with the sky, and now we're going to fill in the inside of the moon. So to do this, I'm using again the 00 marker. This is the warm gray, and I'm just going to fill in the craters of the moon. One thing you want to be careful with is you want to make sure you leave about 1/4 inch white rim between the sky and the inside of the moon, because otherwise the moon will kind of disappear into the sky and you won't be able to see it. So here I'm just taking a mixture of W0, W1, and W00 on the inside of the moon, and then I went around the rim with a colorless blender to make sure that the rim was white. Now we're going to start filling in the water, and I'm starting with B34, and we're going to have the darker colors in the water be more on the outer edges, and then we'll have like a kind of a greenish blue on the inside. A moment ago when I took the ruler and drew a line across the page, what I was doing is just marking the horizon line so that I know where I need to draw that in later. Now I'm just kind of having fun with my markers, with my different blue-green markers and my different dark blue markers, and I'm just kind of playing and just using the flicking motion, going back and forth across the page, making sure that the edges are darker and that the middle is lighter, because we want to be able to see the glow and the reflection of the moon in the water. Now we're going to start drawing in the trees, and I'm using an E29 marker here. We're going to draw a total of 4 trees on the page. And, my advice to you on the trees is don't worry about it too much. Just draw a line from the bottom of the page to the top of the page, and then for the branches, just keep drawing in thin lines in the shape of a wishbone or the shape of a Y that kind of bend here and there. And you may want to practice just on a sheet of paper, drawing some of the the trees ahead of time, just so you can get your hand used to the motion that's necessary to make these wishbones. And for some of the branches, you want to make sure that they extend towards into the moon space, because that will give us a chance to add some red leaves in front of the moon in a little bit, which is really, really pretty. Okay, so now we're going to draw the trees on the left side of the page using the same E29 marker. These trees are a little bit bigger because I wanted to give the impression that they were a little bit closer to us than the smaller trees that are more in the distance. And again, I'm just using that same style of kind of drawing in little Y shapes and wishbone shapes to fill in the branches. And you can have, you know, a lot of branches, a few branches, it's up to you. And if you feel that you, at some point, you make a mistake, I'll show you how to fix that in a second. We can color it with some leaves. All right, so now we're going to add a shadow to the right side of the trees. And to do that, we're going to use an E49 marker. And you can have your shadow on the right side, on the left side, whichever you like, but it's probably best to be consistent. So I'm just taking that E49 along the right side, and I'm also building out the tree trunks a little bit on the bottom, because tree trunks get bigger. So I'm having, instead of the trees maintain their kind of straight up and down shape, I'm having them come out more in like an upside down V shape towards the bottom. And just, you know, add the E49 on some of the branches on the underside. You don't have to do it on all of them, but just here and there, just to kind of keep the same shadow effect going. Okay, now is the fun part. Now we're going to add the pretty little red leaves to all the trees. And here, you're just going to use a dotting motion, or you can even hold your Copic marker a little bit on an angle so that when you press down on the page, it leaves kind of like an oval shape. I just leave it to you, whichever feels more comfortable to you. And just basically put your leaves wherever you like. So I wanted to have kind of like, I wanted it to look like the leaves were falling from the trees. So I left some piles of leaves on the ground in front of the trees, and then I made the leaves pretty thick towards the outside edges of the page, and then just kind of wispy little trails of leaves the closer that I got to the moon, because I wanted to make sure that the moon shows through and doesn't kind of get lost in the scene. So I'm just going to keep doing that. Going to keep adding my little red leaves here and there on the right side of the page. And there I had a little blob, but it's okay because I just put more leaves in that section to cover it up. That happens with Copic markers sometimes when you refill them, or sometimes when you just get them, they get I don't know, they have an issue with pressure sometimes. If you do have that happen with your markers, what I found is the best thing to do is open up the other side of the cap. Somehow it will equalize the pressure inside the marker, and then just wipe both ends with a tissue to kind of get rid of the excess, and then it should work fine after that. All right, so now I'm just going to add a second and a third red color into the scene, and I'm just going to add some dots in R89 primarily, and then also some in R39, although you can skip the R39 if you like. Now we're going to draw in the horizon, and usually I would have done this right before we did the trees, but the reason I did it after is because the trees are going to be in front of the horizon in some spots, and I wanted to make sure that we allowed for that. And had we put the horizon in first, you know, I didn't know where the trees were going to end up, and it might not have worked out. So here you have it. So our trees are nice and pretty. They're in front of the horizon line. We have some islands behind the water, And now we're just adding the magic to the scene. So I'm taking a white gel pen and I'm just gonna dot it all over the page. And you can think of this as the pollen floating around in the air. I tend to think of it, or I like to think of it, as the magic in the painting. And this is what's gonna make the painting, for me at least, come to life. And you just wanna have a whole bunch of wispy little white spots all over the page. It's gonna show up the best wherever you have darker colors. So you wanna make sure you hit a lot of the darker color spots. All right, now for the sentiment. So I took out my Hearts and Flowers kit by Gina, which I bought a while ago, but haven't had a chance to use. And I decided that there was this one sentiment that just fit perfectly with this scene, and you'll see how that is in a second. So I'm using my Misty to line up the sentiment on the front of the card. And then I'm going to use Versamark ink and then silver embossing powder from Lawn Fawn. And before I stamped it, I did run my anti-static powder tool over it to make sure that none of the embossing powder stuck. So now we're just using, like I said, the Lawn Fawn embossing powder. I went over it a couple times because the sentiment is kind of thin and I wanted to make sure I got good coverage. And I'm just applying the heat gun to the back as well because the paper started to warp a little bit, and if you want it to flatten, it's a good idea to run the heat gun against the back. I'm using a piece of cherry red cardstock from Gina, which was in that same Hearts and Flowers kit, as the card base, and that's it. That's our card. So I hope you like this video. I hope you try this card. It doesn't take very long to make. It took me 32 minutes. I timed it on my camera. You could definitely duplicate it, I think, in under an hour and use whichever sentiment you like. And I think whoever you send this to would love to get this card. And in fact, I am going to be giving away this card. So if you would like it, please leave me a comment and I will, you know, if there's more than one person who wants it, I'll randomly select someone on by the end of the week, by Friday, and I'll let you know who that person is the next time I post a video. All right, have a great night, everyone, and I will catch you in the next one.